Hello, my name is Martine. Welcome back to my video log, where on the second episode here, I'm going to explain to you my own understanding of MS and how it can affect different people. I'll share some of my own experiences. And basically, there are four best known types of MS. There are some very rare variants, such as Marburg variant, which is extremely uncommon and quite lethal. But back to the main variants. Everybody knows about relapsing remitting disease, which most often starts in your 20s or 30s, but it can kind of go underground, and I think in my own case it has gone underground and hidden from a lot from my awareness. I've had hints of symptoms, but nothing I could kind of stop and demand a doctor's attention and say, will you investigate this or will you fix this? Anyway, the other form of MS is progressive type. In other words, it usually starts later in life and you don't get a respite in symptoms, or you don't get any significant respites in symptoms. So primary progressive, which has a different etiology. It's believed anyway it has a different etiology and is a bit of a different disease, but it starts later in life usually, and there's no let up in it, and it causes quite a lot of disability because it affects the spine and the mobility most of all. Secondary progressive is a more or less previously inevitable progression, well, inevitable to some degree, to a fairly large degree, from being relapsing remitting to being progressively disabling. Once again, a bit like the primary, you don't get the breaks between. It's caused by cumulative damage. This type can be prevented in many cases now by modern medications, biologics, tailored medications, all that kind of thing. So I will just go and describe my own pathway. Oh, before I do that, the fourth variant is known as clinically isolated syndrome. Really, that's when incidentally someone remarks when in their early 20s maybe, or late teens, oh, I've a foot that doesn't work properly. They go and examine it, maybe a doctor, and they record it down, and it's just called, it doesn't seem to have any other features, so it's recorded down, or radiologically isolated syndrome, where they actually see a lesion, a single lesion on an MRI, and they record it and kind of hope that it won't progress. But very often it is the harbinger of relapsing remitting disease. MS affects the myelin sheath of the nervous system, of the central nervous system. That's the brain and the spinal cord, usually in a patchy kind of way. Little lesions in the white matter, they show up on MRI, and you can kind of map the progression by examining series of MRIs. Everybody who gets MS has originally been exposed to the Epstein-Barr virus. Now, this is a very common virus. Almost everybody gets it. Very rarely does someone escape it by the time they are an adult. Some do. And if you do escape it, well, you're not going to get MS. Simple as. There's a few other factors too. One is reckoned to be having a high amount of a bacteria, a gut bacteria in the small intestine called Clostridium perfringens. That's if you have an unusual amount of that, it could trigger episodes. The way it kind of works is that it allows the blood-brain barrier exposure to immune complexes, white blood cells, T cells, B cells, all of that kind of thing. It kind of reduces the or increases the permeability of the blood-brain barrier. So that's kind of one factor. Another factor is smoking early in life, even if one gives it up. It's I smoked. That increases risk factor. And then having the immune reaction to myelin. Your blood cells think that myelin is the Epstein-Barr virus. And since both are circulating in the body, it goes to attack the Epstein-Barr virus, but in doing so, it also attacks the myelin sheath. So then you start getting inflammation. That kind of subsides. Sometimes scarring occurs, and that's the sclerosis. That gives the name sclerosis to the disease. And you can see the white lesions in the brain. Women get it about 3 times as frequently as men, as in most autoimmune diseases. However, when men get it, it's worse. There is a hereditary element or genetic element to it, but it's not a matter of inheriting one particular gene. It's a matter of inheriting a multitude of, or possibly a multitude of genes that make you more prone to it. For instance, you can have twins, identical twins, same genetic component, and they can, one can have MS and the other not, although quite frequently the other one will too. But it is perfectly possible for identical twins to for one not to have it and the other to have it. So, you know, there's more research being done into this on the environmental factors, but I've given you a few ideas there. I would advise you to go check this up on a reputable source online. Don't take my word for it. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I'm just me. Take quite a technical interest in most things, scientific or technical. So I go into things a little bit more than maybe the average person might do. Now, some of the symptoms I have got in the past few months, and indeed before that, one of them is this kind of fizzy sensation through limbs and in the face. And especially I'd kind of get a jolt when I'd move my head sometimes, turn it or move it down, and that's called Lermite syndrome. And it's a telltale sign of MS and one or two other conditions that might affect the top of the spinal cord. Just an irritated area, and move it and it just sends a pile of electricity through you. Another thing is muscle spasms. Now, I have always been very prone to leg cramps, but more recently I've been prone to bilateral leg cramps. Everyone gets leg cramps, maybe when they wake up in the morning or in bed at night. It's quite common, but to have them in both legs and unrelenting, like really that you can't get into an upright position to relieve them. That's characteristic. It's from a spinal issue, bit of spinal inflammation. Also, pins and needles through my arms, legs, hands. A feeling of someone pouring hot water down my tummy and trickling down my leg. And I've gone and checked to see, did something spill, or did I wet myself or something like that? No. It's a very peculiar thing to happen and to experience. It started really, numbness of the toes and top of the feet really was all the time now coming up to Christmas, and a feeling of marshmallow feet. Now it feels as if my right foot has a marshmallow for a shoe. So it feels like the floor is spongy. Everywhere I go, and it increases every, say I might take 50 steps, and the 51st step will be a big marshmallow step, and my foot will nearly go under me. Coming up to Christmas also, I twisted my left foot and went to VHI, Swift Care. They said, I mentioned my foot had been a bit numb, and so it was, I'd less kind of control over it maybe and this was my left foot now, not the right one that's more persistently giving trouble. And they said, do you want us to investigate the neurology aspect to it? And I said, oh, no. There's nothing wrong with me. Well, one does. But my advice to you, if you get any of these symptoms, make a bit of a fuss, because if they are going to be something, you're going to be a long time waiting to get an appointment, and then cumulative damage can occur. That might be nothing. It might be something that can be helped. It might be caused by autoimmune disease like pernicious anemia, one of those types of things. There's many, many causes, and they all need to be, corrected or investigated one way or the other. So start your journey, go to the GP. I know you'll be waiting a month now maybe to see one routinely, but start that journey and start insisting, I want this. I want to find out what the reason is for this symptom. Is there something further lying behind it? Because if I'm going to get it investigated and treated, I might be waiting a long time to do so. And I've heard of somebody else who's had this trouble, and it's not a good place to be when you're really have not got proper answers. Muscle spasms I mentioned, but we all know what cramps are like, muscle cramps. We get them in the leg, but I was getting them in my hands too when trying to open things, open jars. They just go into, and I couldn't, and I'd have to prise my fingers like that. Now it's starting to go into a cramp just because I'm demonstrating. Anyway, that's something that's been happening latterly. I've had cramps in strange places. Well, I've had foot cramps. Some people get them. By itself, it's probably nothing. But when you start getting them in various places, you ask questions. You need to find out why. Oh yes, itching. My legs, body, arms, face. Desperate itching. And prickling, like burning, stabbing, burning feelings, also around the belly and back, like called the MS hug. It's like somebody clasped you tightly and very unpleasantly. It's not cozy, it's not affectionate, it's horrible. But I've had that once or twice, it's very common, I believe. Yeah, difficulty swallowing. Now, feeling like as if the dentist has been injecting to do dental work both sides, and with that you can't really taste anything much when it happens. You start biting the inside of your mouth quite a lot, but worst of all, I think, is when the swallow, you can't kind of swallow properly. This has come and gone on me. I get episodes. When it happens, it's a bit scary. You know, you just have to sit up and gulp. Try and gulp when... be very careful. I nearly choked on some steak a couple of weeks ago. That wasn't nice. So I've learned to be a bit careful about what and how I eat. And when I have that kind of thing on me, the swallowing difficulty, to take stuff that is suitable, you know, some boring stuff. Well, actually, Indian dal is really very nice and it's quite good for those times. Now, this can possibly get worse. And anyway, we hope not. We hope we'll find strategies one way or another. Stiffness, yeah, in the leg muscles, so that you can't coordinate them. That's what I meant to keep coming back to. You cannot, the muscles feel as if they're working against you when you try to walk. You just, like as if somebody put bands around your legs and said, now try and step out there. No, it's not happening. So you're kind of taking teetering steps. Well, I can get around my apartment with caution, without any aid. Going outside my door, I will always have to bring a stick, a walking stick. If I'm going any distance, I have a light frame, not a frame, a rollator, so it can get me walking very well along a path, very, very nicely. Marley Park or any of these kind of places. I went through, I first road tested it in the Newbridge Estate in Donabate last week. It was very good. Went through the high grass too, which surprised me. So, you know, I'm glad I got it. But I may need a few more things as time goes on. But in the meantime, I'll just say goodbye for today, and hope this might help anybody who is or has experienced the same kind of thing as I've been doing, and that you will be able to be inspired to go off and get some help, because it really is important. And you may have to force the issue, especially here in Ireland. You know, it won't just be handed on a plate to you. Bye.